in the age of myths, when gods walked among mortals and fate was written in the stars, there lived a young man destined to become one of the greatest heroes of Greek legend, Perseus. His story begins not with triumph, but with treachery, and the threads of his fate were woven long before he was born. Danae, Perseus' mother, was a princess of Argos. Her father, King Acrisius, had received a chilling prophecy. He would be killed by his own grandson. Terrified, he locked Danae away in a bronze chamber, hoping to prevent her from ever bearing a child. But fate cannot be so easily escaped. Zeus, the king of the gods, saw Danae and was captivated by her beauty. Taking the form of a golden shower, he descended into her chamber, and from their union, Perseus was born. When Acrisius discovered the child, he dared not kill them directly, fearing the wrath of the gods. Instead, he placed Danae and infant Perseus in a wooden chest and cast them into the sea. The waves carried them safely to the island of Seriphos, where they were rescued by a kind fisherman named Dictys. He raised Perseus as his own son, while Danae remained under his protection. But peace never lasts long in the world of myth. The ruler of Seriphos, King Polydectes, became enamored with Danae. When she refused his advances, he plotted to rid himself of Perseus, the only obstacle between him and the woman he desired. Polydectes announced he would marry another woman and demanded that every man on the island bring a gift. Perseus, young and poor, had nothing to offer. To humiliate him, the king declared that he would accept nothing less than the head of Medusa, the most feared of the Gorgons. Medusa was a monster unlike any other. Once a beautiful maiden, she had been cursed by Athena and transformed into a creature with hair of living snakes and a gaze that turned all who looked upon her into stone. Of the 3 Gorgon sisters, Medusa alone was mortal. Her lair lay beyond the edges of the known world, deep within a desolate land, cloaked in perpetual twilight. Perseus, determined to protect his mother and prove his worth, accepted the impossible quest. He set out, but not without divine assistance. Athena, goddess of wisdom, and Hermes, the messenger god, guided and armed him. Hermes gifted Perseus with a curved sword, sharp enough to sever stone. Athena offered a polished shield, as reflective as a mirror, to safely view Medusa without meeting her deadly eyes. But the tools of the gods were not enough. Perseus needed more. The gods directed him to the Gree, 3 ancient sisters who shared one eye and one tooth among them. Cunningly, Perseus stole their eye and refused to return it until they revealed the location of the nymphs who possessed the last gifts he needed: the helm of darkness from Hades, which granted invisibility, winged sandals to fly, and a magical bag, the Pegasus, to safely carry Medusa's head. Equipped with divine gifts and unshakable courage, Perseus soared across the sky, reaching the edge of the world where Medusa slept in her lair, surrounded by statues of her victims. Silently, Perseus approached, his eyes fixed on her reflection in the shield. With precise aim, he brought the sword down and severed her head in a single stroke. From Medusa's neck sprang Pegasus, the a winged horse, and Chrysaor, a warrior, both fathered by Poseidon. Without hesitation, Perseus tucked the head into his bag. But the other Gorgons awoke with a scream. They shrieked in fury, their wings tearing through the sky as they chased him. Perseus, using the helm of darkness, vanished from their sight and escaped. On his journey home, Perseus passed through the kingdom of Ethiopia, where he encountered a new trial. He saw a maiden chained to a rock by the sea, a sacrifice to a sea monster sent by Poseidon. This was Andromeda, daughter of Queen Cassiopeia, who had offended the gods by boasting her beauty was greater than that of the Nereids. To appease Poseidon, Andromeda had been offered as tribute. Perseus, moved by her plight and struck by her beauty, vowed to save her. As the sea monster surged from the depths, Perseus soared above on his winged sandals and plunged his blade into the beast's heart. Victorious, he claimed Andromeda as his bride, though her betrothed, Phineus, challenged him. In the ensuing confrontation, Perseus unveiled Medusa's head, turning his enemies to stone. At last, Perseus returned to Seriphos. He found that King Polydex had not relented, and Danaus still lived under constant threat. Enraged, Perseus stormed the palace. There, before the court, he revealed the head of Medusa. All who had mocked or harmed his family turned to stone, including the tyrant king himself. With his task complete, Perseus returned the divine gifts to their rightful owners. He gave Medusa's head to Athena, who placed it upon her shield, the Aegis, as a symbol of her power. Pegasus flew to Mount Olympus, where he would later serve the Muses and inspire poetry. Perseus, now a hero of legend, traveled with Andromeda to Argus. But fate, as foretold, still hovered. Acrisius, his grandfather, fled upon hearing of his grandson's approach, hoping to avoid the prophecy. Yet destiny is never easily avoided. One day, at a sporting event, Perseus hurled a discus that flew awry and struck an old man in the crowd. It was Acrisius. The prophecy had come to pass. Grief-stricken, Perseus renounced the throne of Argus and traded kingdoms with another king. He ruled justly in Turins, and with Andromeda founded a noble line of descendants. Their blood would one day give rise to another great hero, Heracles. The story of Perseus is one of bravery, divine intervention, and the inescapable pull of fate. He faced monsters born from the gods' wrath, navigated treacherous lands, and overcame impossible odds. But it is not merely the battles or the tools he wielded that make Perseus legendary. It is the heart he showed in protecting those he loved, the wisdom in seeking help, and the humility with which he accepted his destiny. Even among the stars, his story lives on. The gods placed him in the heavens as the constellation Perseus, forever watching over the world below. And so, the tale of the boy born of golden light, who faced the gaze of death and lived to tell the tale, echoes through time, a reminder that even in a world of gods and monsters, a mortal's courage can shape the cosmos. In the golden age of heroes, before men had mapped the farthest seas or dared challenge the gods, there lived a youth whose heart was filled with longing for adventure, for truth, and for the heavens themselves. His name was Bellerophon, and though he was born of mortal stock, the winds of destiny whispered that he would fly where no man had flown before. Bellerophon's early life was cloaked in mystery. Some said he was the son of a mortal king. Others whispered that he was the child of Poseidon, god of the sea and horses. But one truth was undeniable. He was handsome, noble, and brimming with a courage that bordered on divine defiance. He was raised in the city of Corinth, trained in the arts of war and horsemanship. Even as a child, he showed an uncanny connection with horses, often calming even the wildest of beasts with a gentle hand and whispered words. Yet his destiny would not remain in the comfort of stables or the courts of kings. His tale truly began when a tragic accident struck. One fateful day, Bellerophon killed a man. Some say it was his own brother, others a noble guest by mistake. The stain of blood was enough to exile him. Seeking purification, Bellerophon traveled to Turin's, to the court of King Proteus, husband of Queen Esthenebia. Proteus received him with hospitality, recognizing his noble bearing and athletic grace. But danger soon found him again, not from war or monsters, but from desire. Queen Esthenebia, taken by Bellerophon's youth and beauty, tried to seduce him. Loyal and pure of heart, Bellerophon rejected her advances. Scorned and furious, the queen accused him of attempting to dishonor her. Proteus was bound by honor and wrath, yet afraid to spill the blood of one who had sought purification. So he devised another plan. He sent Bellerophon away to Lycia, to his father-in-law, King Eurydice, carrying a sealed letter. Unbeknownst to Bellerophon, the message asked for his death, but Eurydice too was torn. He could not murder a guest outright. So instead, he set Bellerophon a task he believed no man could survive. He told him to slay a beast that had brought terror to the land for years, the Chimera. The Chimera was no ordinary creature. It had the body of a lion, the head of a goat rising from its back, and a serpent for a tail. Its breath was fire, and its hunger knew no limits. It had already scorched villages and devoured brave warriors who dared face it. Sending Bellerophon against it was a death sentence in disguise. But Bellerophon did not falter. He accepted the challenge, though a tremor stirred in his heart. He knew he could not face such a monster on foot. And that's when a legend, half forgotten even in those days, whispered to him. If he was to defeat the Chimera, he would need the aid of a creature as legendary and untouchable as the beast itself. The winged horse, Pegasus. Pegasus, born from the blood of the slain Gorgon Medusa, was a creature of impossible beauty. His wings spanned wide as sails, his hooves never touched the earth for long, and his mane shimmered like moonlight on water. No man had ever tamed him. Some said he drank only from the sacred springs of the Muses, on Mount Helicon. Others claimed he was as free as the stars, uncatchable, unclaimable. But Bellerophon was not like other men. He traveled to the temple of Athena, goddess of wisdom, and prayed beneath the stars for guidance. He fasted, he offered gifts, and he dreamed. And one night, in his sleep, the goddess appeared. She offered him a gift, a golden bridle glowing with divine light. "Take this," she said, "and seek Pegasus by the sacred spring of Pyre. Only with this will you gain his trust." Bellerophon awoke with the bridle in hand, trembling with awe. He journeyed to the spring, and there, shimmering in the morning mist, stood Pegasus. As Bellerophon approached, the winged horse reared, his hooves thundering like drums of the sky. But Bellerophon held out the golden bridle, and Pegasus stilled. For the first time, he allowed a mortal to draw near. With calm hands, Bellerophon placed the bridle over his head and mounted his back. At once, the horse took flight. The sky opened before them like a vast ocean. Clouds parted, and winds sang as man and beast soared together. Never before had a mortal risen so high, and never since has one matched the beauty of that union between spirit and sky. Riding Pegasus, Bellerophon flew toward the lair of the chimera. The beast roared at the sky as he approached, fire leaping from its throat. The battle was savage. Bellerophon swooped and struck from above, his spear finding no purchase against the beast's armored hide. But he was clever. Using a chunk of lead affixed to the tip of his spear, he dove straight into the monster's path and thrust it into the lion's gaping mouth. The chimera inhaled to unleash fire, but the lead melted in its throat and choked the flames. The beast writhed, roared, and then fell silent and dead. The people of Lycia rejoiced. King Eurydice was stunned. Bellerophon, the man he had been sent to kill, had done the impossible. To test him further, Eurydice sent him against more threats, hostile tribes, rampaging pirates, even the Amazons. Bellerophon, ever mounted on Pegasus, triumphed again and again. At last, Eurydice accepted that Bellerophon was not an ordinary mortal. He must have been blessed by the gods. Humbled, the king revealed the truth of the letter and begged for forgiveness. He gave Bellerophon his daughter's hand in marriage and half the kingdom as dowry. Bellerophon had everything now: fame, glory, love, even the friendship of gods and kings. But the line between pride and hubris is a fragile one. Over time, Bellerophon began to believe that he belonged in the heavens, not among mortals. He had tamed Pegasus. He had slain the chimera. Why should he not join the gods on Mount Olympus? Why should he not be counted as divine? And so, one clear morning, Bellerophon mounted Pegasus once more. He turned his eyes upward, not to battle, not to save, but to claim his place among immortals. They soared into the sky, higher than ever before. The air grew thin. The clouds glowed golden. Olympus approached, a shining peak above the world. But the gods watched. Zeus, king of Olympus, saw Bellerophon's arrogance. Mortals had limits. the heavens were not meant to be claimed by human pride. And so, as Pegasus neared the gates of the divine realm, Zeus sent a single gadfly, small and unseen, to sting Pegasus on the flank. Startled, the winged horse bucked wildly. Bellerophon lost his grip. He tumbled from the sky, falling not for seconds, but what felt like eternity. He landed in a remote corner of the world, crippled, broken, and alone. He wandered the earth after that, a shadow of the hero he had once been. No longer did he speak of Olympus. No longer did he seek glory. Some say he went mad. Others say he found peace. Pegasus, freed from mortal reign, returned to the stars, where Zeus placed him as a constellation, his wings eternally outstretched across the night sky. And Bellerophon, he became a warning carved into the memory of history, a symbol of mortal potential and mortal limits. In the days when gods still roamed the earth and heroes shaped the fate of the world, there lived a maiden whose spirit rivaled the wind and whose courage outshone many a man. Her name was Atalanta, and her story is not one of gentle love or courtly praise. It is a tale of speed, pride, destiny, and the consequences of desire. Atalanta was born to a king, but not welcomed like a princess. Her father, wanting only sons to carry on his line, looked upon the infant girl with scorn. In his cold ambition, he abandoned her on a mountainside to die. Yet the gods, or fate, had other plans. Left alone beneath the open sky, the infant Atalanta cried not with weakness, but with life. And the wild answered. A mother bear, sent by Artemis, goddess of the hunt and protector of maidens, found the child and suckled her as her own. Among the forests and creatures, Atalanta grew not delicate and soft, but fierce and wild, raised by nature, tutored by instinct. As she came of age, she became a legend in the woodlands. She could outrun the swiftest deer, shoot arrows with deadly precision, and climb the tallest trees with ease. Hunters whispered of the wild girl who raced the wind and walked among beasts. Some feared her. Others worshipped her. But all knew she was no ordinary mortal when she learned her true parentage, that she was the daughter of a king. She did not seek comfort or power. She remained loyal to the goddess Artemis and swore an oath. She would remain a virgin, free from the chains of marriage, and live by the bow and the hunt. But fate, as ever, has a way of testing even the strongest oaths. Atalanta's name spread far and wide. When the monstrous Caledonian boar was sent by Artemis to ravage the land, punishment for a king who had failed to honor her, it was Atalanta who answered the call. While mighty warriors assembled, including Jason, Theseus, and Meleager, it was Atalanta who first drew blood from the beast. Meleager, smitten by her courage and beauty, awarded her the hide, even over his own kin. It caused strife, bloodshed, and eventually Meleager's own death. But Atalanta remained steadfast, unmoved by love, faithful only to the hunt. Still, the world could not let her be. Word of her beauty and prowess reached her estranged father. who, suddenly proud of his daughter, demanded she return and marry. Kings and princes lined up to win her hand, but Atalanta, true to her vow, refused. She offered a challenge instead. Any man who wished to marry her must beat her in a foot race. If he lost, he would die. It was a cruel bargain, yet dozens came. They built temples to the gods, trained for years, and still, one by one, they failed. Each suitor fell behind her golden hair streaming in the wind, her feet barely touching the ground, as swift and merciless as a storm. Their lives ended where their pride began, beneath the shadow of Atalanta's speed. Then came Hippomenes. He was not the strongest, nor the fastest, but he was clever, descended from a noble line, and guided by a keen mind, and some say, the subtle pull of fate. Hippomenes, upon seeing Atalanta, was stricken not only by her beauty, but by her spirit. Yet he did not rush forward like the others. He observed. He studied. He prayed not to Artemis, but to Aphrodite, the goddess of love, who, perhaps amused by Atalanta's disdain for romance, decided to intervene. Aphrodite gave Hippomenes a gift: 3 golden apples from her sacred garden. Not just beautiful, they were enchanted, irresistible to the eye and the heart. Use them wisely, the goddess whispered, for desire can win what strength cannot. Hippomenes stepped forward and declared his challenge. The crowd murmured, wondering if he too would fall like the rest. Atalanta looked at him, curious. There was something different in his gaze, not arrogance, but purpose. The race began. They surged forward, Atalanta a blur of grace, her feet whispering against the earth. But Hippomenes stayed close. Not too fast, not too slow. Then, as she began to pull ahead, he dropped the first golden apple. It rolled across her path, catching the sunlight like fire. Atalanta hesitated. Her eyes followed the glinting orb, curiosity piqued. Just long enough for Hippomenes to gain ground. She scooped up the apple and resumed, quickly closing the gap. He dropped the second. Again she slowed. This time, a flicker of emotion crossed her face. Wonder, irritation, fascination. She picked up the apple, even as her instincts screamed to run. The crowd held its breath. No man had ever come this close. As the finish line neared, Hippomenes dropped the third and final apple not haphazardly, but with perfect timing, throwing it slightly off the path. Atalanta's gaze darted sideways. This apple gleamed brighter than the others, as if it held the sun itself. Something inside her shifted. She veered. She bent. She reached for the apple, and Hippomenes passed her. He crossed the line first. The crowd erupted. Atalanta stood still, the golden apple warm in her hand, her chest rising and falling, not with anger, but with wonder. Hippomenes had won, but the story did not end with triumph. The two were wed, their love sanctioned by the gods, or so they believed. Yet, in their passion and pride, they forgot to offer thanks to Aphrodite. And the goddess, though generous in love, was not kind when scorned. One day, overcome by desire, Hippomenes and Atalanta entered a sacred temple, some say of Cybele, others of Aphrodite herself, and there they defiled it in a moment of passion. The goddess, enraged by the insult, cursed them. Their bodies stiffened. Their cries faded into roars. Their skin turned coarse, their limbs reshaped. And before long, the two lovers were transformed into lions, forever bound, forever untouchable by man or God. Ancient myth held that lions, once human, could never mate again, cursed to walk beside one another in eternal tension, close, yet never united as before. This is the tale of Atalanta and Hippomenes, a story of speed and desire, of love and loss, of the wild spirit that cannot be tamed. It reminds us that even the swiftest can be ensnared by fate, and that the heart, once set free, may find itself in chains of its own making. In a world where gods played among mortals, and fate wove its threads without mercy or favor, there lived a man whose music could still the winds and stir the hearts of stones. His name was Orpheus, son of the muse Calliope, and by some accounts, the god Apollo. From the moment he drew breath, the world around him listened. Birds hushed their songs to hear him play. Rivers slowed their current to follow the sound of his lyre. Even the gods themselves paused, captivated by his melodies that spoke not just to the ears, but to the soul. Yet all the beauty Orpheus created, all the joy he gave to the world, paled in comparison to the light he found in Eurydice. She was not a goddess nor a princess. She was a nymph, gentle and wild, belonging to the earth and forest, and to no one but herself. When Orpheus first saw her, it was as if every chord he had ever played suddenly made sense. In her eyes, he found the harmony his music had long sought. Their love blossomed quickly, like spring waking the trees from their winter slumber. They danced among the fields, wandered through meadows, and sang to one another beneath moonlit skies. Their wedding was simple, but sacred. Nature itself seemed to rejoice. The flowers opened wider, the sky stretched brighter, and even the wind carried their names with joy. The fates, however, watched in silence, for in every thread of joy there is a shadow, and happiness, when it burns too brightly, often draws the eyes of tragedy. Not long after their union, as Eurydice wandered through a glade, she was spotted by Aristeus, a minor god of agriculture. Entranced by her beauty, he pursued her with reckless desire. Fleeing his gaze, Eurydice ran barefoot through the woods, her breath tight with panic. In her flight, she did not see the serpent coiled in the grass. One bite, that was all. A single cry, quickly swallowed by silence. By the time Orpheus found her, her body was already cooling in his arms. Her eyes, once filled with laughter, were now empty, and her voice, his favorite song, was gone forever. Orpheus wept, but not in silence. His grief poured into his music. Songs of sorrow echoed across the land, and the world wept with him. Trees shed leaves out of season. Rivers overflowed. Birds flew silently. The gods themselves, moved by his mourning, urged him to move on. But Orpheus would not. He could not. Love like theirs was not made to end. So he resolved to do what no living soul had ever dared. Descend into the realm of the dead and bring her back. Clutching his lyre, Orpheus walked into the underworld, through caverns and chasms, past bones and forgotten names. He descended. The air grew colder. The silence deepened. This was not a place for mortals. It was the realm of Hades, where no heartbeat echoed and no sunlight reached. When he arrived at the gates of the underworld, Cerberus, the monstrous three-headed hound, snarled. But Orpheus did not flinch. He played his lyre, and the notes flowed like a lullaby. Cerberus whimpered, then lay down, lulled into sleep by the gentle power of song. Further in, he passed the ghosts of the damned, the mournful, the lost, the vengeful. But they made no move to stop him. Even their tormented hearts remembered love when Orpheus played. At last, he reached the thrones of Hades and Persephone, rulers of the dead. They stared at him in silence as he fell to his knees. He did not speak at first. Instead, he played. He played of love that bloomed like dawn. He played of laughter in the grass and whispers under stars. He played of loss terrible and sudden. And then he sang. He sang to Hades of being left behind. He sang to Persephone of longing, of aching for a hand that would never again be held. His voice trembled but never broke. His music asked for only one thing, not power, not glory, not even mercy, only Eurydice. The underworld was still. Even the Furies, goddesses of vengeance, wept. Persephone, her heart moved by the raw purity of Orpheus' plea, turned to Hades. The god of the dead, unmoved by countless souls, stared at Orpheus and nodded. She may return, Hades said, his voice like stone. But on one condition. Orpheus waited. You must walk back to the world above, he continued, with Eurydice behind you. You must trust that she follows. But you must not look back, not once, until you both have passed beyond the threshold. If you turn, she will be lost to you forever. Orpheus agreed without hesitation, and so Eurydice was summoned. Pale and silent, she emerged from the shadows. She could not speak, nor could she touch him, but she was there, and the journey began. Step by step, Orpheus walked forward, the silence behind him heavier than stone. His every breath ached to hear her voice. His every step tempted him to glance back. He could feel her presence, faint but real. The path was long. The darkness seemed to stretch endlessly. The weight of doubt grew with every heartbeat. Was she really there? Was it a trick of Hades? Was this a cruel punishment masked as mercy? The light of the upper world began to seep into the tunnel. Orpheus could see the sun again, trees, sky, color. He stepped forward, and the warmth of life touched his skin, but the silence behind him remained. He stood now at the very edge of life. One step more, and he would be free. And still no sound. In a moment of desperate love and unbearable doubt, he turned. Just over his shoulder, Eurydice stood. Their eyes met, hers filled with sadness, his with horror. And then she was gone. No scream, no farewell. She faded like mist at dawn, drawn back into the shadows from which she came. Orpheus reached out, but grasped only air. His cry shattered the silence. This time, there was no second chance. He had broken the one rule, the one thread on which their hope had hung. His trust had faltered, and with it, he had lost her forever. Orpheus returned to the living world, but not to life. He wandered alone, his music now a lament that even the birds refused to echo. He sang no more of joy or love. His lyre wept. Forests grew quiet when he passed, and rivers mourned as he approached. He refused every offer of comfort, every hand that reached for him. No woman could ever take Eurydice's place. No light could erase the shadow he had chosen. In time, his journey came to an end. Some say he was torn apart by Maenads, followers of Dionysus, who could not bear his rejection of earthly pleasure. Others say he simply faded into the hills, becoming one with the wind and the trees. His lyre, cast into the heavens, became a constellation, the Lyra, forever singing silent songs to the stars. The story of Orpheus and Eurydice is more than a myth. It is a mirror of the human heart. It tells us that love is worth any journey, even into the jaws of death. But it also warns us that love without trust is fragile, that even the purest devotion must endure doubt to survive. Orpheus' failure was not a lack of love, it was an excess of fear. And perhaps that is the cruelest part of all, that in seeking to protect what he cherished most, he lost it. Yet in that loss, we find something eternal. For even now, centuries later, the tale endures. Poets write of it. Artists paint it. Musicians Orpheus, children in spirit, sing of it still. Not as a tragedy alone, but as a testament to the power of love. A love that dared to defy death. A love that still calls across the ages. Some say that when the wind is just right, and the night is quiet, you can still hear Orpheus, lyre, playing softly, gently, like a memory you almost forgot, calling, always calling for Eurydice.